Cyber Threat Brief for May 11, 2026. Google catches the first confirmed AI-developed zero-day before mass exploitation. The Gentleman ransomware explodes to third place globally after Ether RAT campaigns hit Windows targets. cPanel CVE 2026-41940 is under active exploitation with 2,000-plus attacker IPs deploying backdoors worldwide. Here's the full breakdown of today's top security stories. Daily IT Security Brief, 2026-0511. Next section, Critical Alerts. cPanel CVE 2026-41940 under active exploitation to deploy File Manager backdoor. A threat actor named Mr. Rot13 is actively exploiting CVE 2026-41940, a critical authentication bypass in cPanel and Web Host Manager that allows remote attackers to gain elevated control. The vulnerability was added to CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CEV, Known Exploited Vulnerabilities Catalog, with a due date of 2026-053 and has an EPSS, the Exploit Prediction Scoring System, score of 0, 670, 99th percentile. Over 2,000 attacker source IPs worldwide are conducting automated attacks, primarily originating from Germany, the United States, Brazil, and the Netherlands. The attack deploys a Go-based infector that implants SSH public keys for persistence, drops PHP web shells for remote command execution, and injects JavaScript to serve fake login pages that steal credentials via ROT13 encoded exfiltration to attacker-controlled infrastructure. The campaign ultimately deploys a cross-platform backdoor called File Manager capable of file management, remote command execution, and shell functionality across Windows, Mac OS, and Linux systems. Action: verify you are running cPanel version 2.0.13829. VC 72453, FA1C16, December 2025, or later. Check for unauthorized SSH keys, review bash history and database password files for signs of compromise, and inspect web directories for PHP shells. Block the domains cp, dean, de, com, wrned, com, and wsock, com at the firewall. This threat actor has operated silently since at least 2020 with extremely low detection rates. Sources: The Hacker News. Google detects first AI-developed zero-day exploit. 2FA bypass. Google Threat Intelligence Group identified a zero-day exploit targeting a popular open-source web administration tool that was likely developed using an AI large language model. The vulnerability allows attackers to bypass two-factor authentication and requires valid user credentials for exploitation. Google assessed with high confidence that an AI model was used based on the exploit code structure, including excessive educational docstrings, a hallucinated CVSS, the Common Vulnerability Scoring System, SCORE, and highly structured Pythonic formatting characteristic of LLM training data. The vulnerability stems from a high-level semantic logic flaw arising from hard-coded trust assumptions, which AI systems excel at identifying. The exploit was associated with a prominent cybercrime group planning a mass exploitation operation. Google worked with the impacted vendor to patch the flaw before attackers could deploy it at scale. Action: while the specific product is not disclosed, review all web administration tools for available security updates. This incident confirms AI is now accelerating vulnerability discovery and exploit weaponization in the wild. Monitor for unusual 2FA bypass attempts and credential abuse patterns. Organizations using open-source web admin tools should prioritize patching and consider implementing additional authentication layers beyond 2FA. Sources: Google Threat Intelligence, The Hacker News, Security Week, Cyberscoop, The Register Bleeping Computer. Next section, Ransomware and Extortion. Ether RAT and tuk command and control end in the Gentleman ransomware. The DFIR report documented an intrusion where Ether RAT malware deployed via a malicious MSI masquerading as sysinternal's RAM map led to the Gentleman ransomware deployment. The initial infection vector was CVE 2025-55182, React 2 shell, a CISA KEV vulnerability with an EPSS score of 0, 820, 99th percentile, and a due date of 2025-12-12. The malware deployed a portable node. JS runtime used the Ethereum blockchain through Ether hiding for dynamic C2 configuration updates via 1RPC. EO and established persistence through registry run keys. The threat actors later deployed tuk malware variants disguised as legitimate tools like Greenshot, SyncTracer, DocFX, and Cake build automation system via DLL, dynamic link library, sideloading. Tuk established primary C2 channels through SAW-S platforms, ClickHouse and Supabase with backup channels via Ably, Dropbox, direct HTTP, GitHub issues, and Arweave blockchain for dead drop resolver capability. The actors conducted Kerberoasting operations, credential discovery targeting administrative accounts, and deployed Go to resolve RMM, remote monitoring and management, tooling laterally across multiple systems, including servers and domain controllers, before successfully exfiltrating data to cloud services and deploying the gentleman ransomware. Action: review the CIS KEV list and patch CVE 2025-55182 immediately if not already deployed. Block 1 RPC. EO at the firewall if blockchain-based C2 is not required for business operations. Monitor for portable node. JS runtime deployments, registry run key modifications, and use of legitimate tools like Greenshot or SyncTracer for DLL sideloading. Implement strict controls on RMM tool deployment, especially Go to resolve. Inspect outbound connections to ClickHouse, Supabase, Ably, Dropbox, and GitHub for anomalous data exfiltration patterns. Sources: the DFIR report. The State of Ransomware, Q1 2026. Consolidation and the Gentleman's Breakout Checkpoint research reports that ransomware operations are consolidating after 2 years of fragmentation. The top 10 ransomware groups accounted for 71% of all Q1 2026 victims, up from 57% in Q3 2025. There were 2,122 victims posted on data leak sites in Q1 2026, the second highest Q1 on record. Killin maintained dominance for the third consecutive quarter with 338 victims. The Gentleman ransomware is the breakout story of Q1 2026, climbing to third place globally and increasing victim count from 40 in Q4 2025 to 166 in Q1 2026. Lockbit 5.0 posted 163 victims in Q1 2026, climbing to fourth place. The number of active groups shrank from 85 to 71, as 14 groups disappeared entirely, while 21 new groups appeared, but posted fewer than 10 victims each. This consolidation pattern follows law enforcement disruptions, where surviving groups absorb displaced talent pools and grow. Larger RAW-S brands invest in operational consistency, including functional decryption tools, because their business model depends on the perception that victim payment results in data recovery, in contrast to transient operators with no such incentive. Action: this consolidation means attacks are shifting from unpredictable one-off operators to established groups with reliable infrastructure and decryption capabilities. Focus defenses on preventing initial access and lateral movement rather than relying on post-payment recovery. Monitor for activity from Killin, the Gentleman, and Lockbit 5.0 as they represent 41% of all Q1 2026 victims. Sources: Checkpoint Research. Next section: Business and Infrastructure Threats. Checkmarx Jenkins ASD plugin, compromised in supply chain attack. Checkmarx warned users that a malicious version of its Jenkins ASD plugin was published to the Jenkins marketplace as part of a supply chain attack. The plugin integrates Checkmarx One Platform functionality into Jenkins pipelines for source code scanning. Checkmarx confirmed that users should run version 2.0.13829. VC 72453, FA1C16, published December 2025, and subsequently released new versions including 2.0.13800 and 48. V76E89 to 8A053. The incident is part of an ongoing supply chain attack that began in March when the Team PCP hacker gang accessed Checkmarx's repositories through the Trivy supply chain attack. A second wave of malicious artifacts was published in April, and the Ransomware Extortion group publicly released data stolen from the company's GitHub repositories in late March using credentials compromised through the Trivy attack. Action: if you use the Checkmarx Jenkins ASD plugin, immediately verify you are running version 2.0.13800 and 48. V76E89 to 8A053 or later from the official Jenkins marketplace or Checkmarx GitHub. Review Jenkins pipeline logs for suspicious scanning activity or unexpected data exfiltration. Organizations using Trivy or other tools compromised in the March supply chain attack should rotate credentials and review access logs for signs of compromise. Sources: Security Week. Build application firewalls aim to stop supply chain attacks. Many serious supply chain attacks are caused by flaws built into applications during the CI/CD build process. The same approach of compromising the development cycle of widely used tools successfully repeated since the 2020 SolarWinds attack continues. In March 2026, North Korean actors hijacked an Axios NPM library maintainer account and published 2 malicious versions downloaded by around 3% of the Axios user base during the brief period before removal. Team PCP compromised Aqua's Trivy vulnerability scanner, Berry AI's Lite LLM, and Checkmark/Kicks in February/March 2026 to get into CI/CD of widely used tools. Merkur announced itself as one of thousands of companies impacted by the Lite LLM supply chain attack. European Commission lost 300 gigabytes of data to hackers using an API key compromised in the Trivy supply chain attack. The problem is bad code being introduced into the CI/CD application build process, often invisible to developers. Most build systems pull in NPM or PyPI packages automatically, but a compromised package, typo-squatted dependency, or malicious version will still get included. Scanners designed to check what goes into CI/CD can often detect problematic code, but sometimes cannot, especially when the bad intent doesn't appear malicious or when unknown 0 days are present. Action: consider implementing build application firewalls, BAF, that perform deep packet inspection of all packages entering the build process rather than relying solely on scanning. Use hardened runners with visibility beyond DNS to detect secrets being exfiltrated to normally acceptable destinations like GitHub. Review all NPM and PyPI dependencies for recent malicious versions, especially Axios, Trivy, Lite LLM, and Kicks. Rotate API keys and secrets that may have been exposed through compromised CI/CD tools. Sources: Security Week. Next section, Windows/Active Directory security. Why changing passwords doesn't end an Active Directory breach password. Resets do not immediately invalidate old credentials across every authentication path in Active Directory and hybrid Entra ID environments. Windows systems cache password hashes locally to support offline logon, creating 3 possible states after a password reset. The user logged in with the new credential while connected to AD, cached credential store updates. The user has not logged into a particular machine since reset. Old cached credential may still be usable. Or in hybrid deployments, the password was reset in AD but has not yet synchronized to Entra ID. Old password may still authenticate during the sync interval. Attackers exploit this gap through pass-the-hash attacks, where the hash itself is used instead of the plain text password, meaning changing the password doesn't immediately invalidate it everywhere. Active sessions using Kerberos tickets remain authenticated even after password changes, because tickets are valid for a set period. Service accounts with long-lived passwords and elevated privileges are less likely to be reset quickly due to disruption risk, making them a reliable fallback for attackers. Unless sessions are explicitly invalidated through logoff, reboot, or ticket purging, access can continue well beyond the reset. Action: during incident response, password resets alone are insufficient. Force logoff or reboot of all systems where the compromised account had active sessions. Purge Kerberos tickets on domain controllers. In hybrid environments, verify password hash synchronization to Entra ID has completed before considering the reset effective. For service accounts, plan downtime to rotate credentials safely. Consider solutions that update local cached credential stores immediately at the endpoint where reset is performed to close the window where old hashes remain usable. Sources: Bleeping Computer. Next section, General Security News. AI-augmented threat operations. Autonomous malware and defense evasion. Google Threat Intelligence Group's latest report documents AI's dual role as a sophisticated engine for adversary operations and a high-value target for attacks. Chinese actors APT-27 and UNC 2814 deployed agentic tools like Strix and Hexstrike in attacks targeting Japanese tech firms and East Asian cybersecurity companies, using persona-driven jailbreaks to enhance vulnerability research on embedded devices, including TP-Link firmware. North Korean APT-45 sent thousands of repetitive prompts to recursively analyze CVEs and validate proof of concept exploits, creating a more robust arsenal of exploit capabilities impractical to manage without AI assistance. Russia-linked actors used AI-generated decoy code to obfuscate malware such as Canfail and Longstream. The Prompt Spy Android backdoor integrates with Gemini APIs for autonomous device interaction using a hard-coded prompt to assign a benign persona and bypass LLM safety features. Prompt Spy calculates the geometry of user interface bounds to interact with devices autonomously, can replay authentication gestures such as lock screen PINs or patterns using captured biometric data. It prevents uninstallation by identifying the on-screen coordinates of the uninstall button and serving an invisible overlay to block touch events. Threat actors are industrializing access to premium AI models using automated account creation, proxy relays, and account pooling infrastructure. The Russian operation, Overload, used AI voice cloning to impersonate real journalists in fake videos promoting anti-Ukraine narratives. Action: monitor for unusual patterns of LLM API usage that may indicate automated account cycling or abuse of trial access. Implement detection for Android malware using accessibility services to manipulate UI elements autonomously. Review mobile device management policies to restrict apps with excessive accessibility permissions. Organizations should assume nation-state actors now have access to AI-accelerated vulnerability research and exploit development capabilities. Sources: Google Threat Intelligence. FCC relaxes foreign router ban to allow security updates. Until 2029, the U.S. Federal Communications Commission updated its ban on foreign-made routers to allow vendors to ship security updates until January 1, 2029. The FCC banned the sale of foreign routers in March, but initially allowed companies to ship security updates for one more year until March 2027. Based on comments from government and private sector, the cutoff date was extended to January 2029. The exemption applies only to security updates that mitigate harm to consumers, and foreign companies are not allowed to ship new features via this mechanism. The same exemption and cutoff date applies to foreign-made drones, which the FCC banned in December with an initial cutoff date of January 1, 2027. While the U.S. government hinted at banning Chinese companies DJI and TP-Link, a blanket ban on foreign-made drones and routers came unexpectedly. The constant updates these two bans have received on an almost bi-weekly pace shows how little the agency considered possible long-term consequences. Routers and hotspots usually remain in networks for at least a decade and need to receive security updates. Action: organizations still relying on foreign-made routers should plan replacement timelines before the January 2029 security update cutoff. Routers stay connected to the internet at all times and create a wide attack surface. Begin budgeting for domestic or approved router replacements and inventory all foreign-made networking equipment currently deployed. Sources: Risky Biz News. Shiny Hunters disrupts U.S. schools via Instructure Canvas platform. Hackers breached and defaced the student management platform of ed tech company Instructure. The company placed the Canvas platform in maintenance mode after the Shiny Hunters group posted ransom notes on the login screens of some schools. The initial breach took place last month, but Shiny Hunters defaced the login portals after Instructure failed to pay a ransom. The defacement prevented some schools from accessing the platform during end-of-year exams. Action: schools and educational institutions using Instructure Canvas should verify their instances were not compromised during the initial breach. Monitor for unauthorized changes to student records or administrative accounts. Consider alternative exam proctoring platforms as backup during critical testing periods. Sources: Risky Biz News. Next section: patch priority. cPanel/WHM, Critical Authentication Bypass, CVE 2026-41940 under active exploitation, 2,000 plus attacker IPs worldwide deploying backdoors. React 2 Shell, CVE 2025-55182, CIS AKEV, DO 2025-1212. Linked to Ether RAT and the Gentleman ransomware campaigns. Jenkins ASD plugin checkmarks. Supply chain attack, update to version 2.0.13848. V76E89 to 8A053 or later immediately. Web admin tools with 2FA, unspecified open source tool, patched after Google detected AI-developed zero-day bypass exploit. Linux kernel, multiple CVEs published including KSMBD ACE validation issues, CVE 2026-31706, and 3 additional CVEs. See show notes for the full list. Next section: vulnerability disclosures. Microsoft Security Update Guide. Linux kernel CVEs. Microsoft published multiple Linux kernel CVEs affecting Windows subsystem for Linux, WSL, and related components. Notable disclosures include CVE 2026-31706, and all related to KSMBD ACE validation and response size validation issues with EPSS scores ranging from 0.0, second percentile, to 0.0, 15th percentile. Additional CVEs include Netamap Startle's stripping vulnerability, EPSS 0.1/16th percentile, BTRFS transaction items issue, EPSS 0.0/5th percentile, and multiple RDMA, AMD GPU, and Bluetooth vulnerabilities with low EPSS scores indicating minimal observed exploitation activity, and 5 additional CVEs. See show notes for the full list. Action: organizations running Windows subsystem for Linux should prioritize installing available updates for these kernel vulnerabilities. While EPSS scores are currently low, the public disclosure increases exploitation risk over time. Focus on KSMBD-related CVEs if running SMB, small and medium business, server functionality within WSL environments. Sources: MSRC Security, Update Guide MSRC, and 5 additional CVEs. See show notes for the full list. Next section, Trends and Context. AI is now confirmed as an active tool in the vulnerability discovery and exploit development pipeline, with Google's detection of the first AI-generated zero-day marking a watershed moment. The ransomware ecosystem is consolidating around fewer, more dominant operators like Killin and the Gentleman, moving away from the fragmentation scene in 2025. Supply chain attacks continue to target CI/CD pipelines with sophisticated techniques that bypass traditional scanning tools, demonstrating the need for deeper inspection capabilities at the build stage. That concludes today's Cyber Threat Brief. From Carolina, Clear Tech. Stay patched, stay vigilant.